Hey everybody, welcome to Pink Shade. It's Thursday. That means we're going to talk about Bravo. It's Shades of Bravo on Thursday. Guys, I did a thing a while back where I was trying to come up with what to call Thursdays where I talk about Bravo and other stuff. Sometimes Bravo, mostly Bravo. We came up with Shades of Bravo. Still not on board with it. Still don't think it's a great title. Every time I say it, it doesn't roll off the tongue. So if anybody has an idea of what I can call the Thursday episode that usually is Bravo, but sometimes we touch on other things, let me know. Still don't like Shades of Bravo. Anyway, that's not here or there. Today, I've got my friend with me. It's Jodene Weber from Caught in My Web. It's a Patreon podcast where she does a daily show and bonuses also where she talks about cases in the news and some cases I never heard of that she has, as she says in her tagline, brought to my attention. So, Jodie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me back, Mary Payne.
You like to talk about true crime, but you also like to talk about Bravo.
I sure do. And there is some merging there. There is some true crime that intersects with these housewife shows, so it all goes hand in hand.
Yeah. Are you scared of Louis as a former FBI agent? Are you afraid of Louis?
Well, let me tell you what. I listened to not Shades of Bravo. I'm sorry, the Bravo Docket, that podcast where they went over all the court filings related to him. Oh my goodness, I got a lot of thoughts about that.
Well, tell me, because I've listened to it too, but I was like, who's crazier, him or that ex?
Well, that's the question. Let me tell you, when I heard that, the ex is just as alarming. But what I heard when she made him basically write those letters and make these admissions that he was a narcissist and, just this whole laundry list of horrible behavior by him. The first thing I thought to myself is, well, no guy would do this, number one, unless there was something in it for him. So then I started listening. And when you hear what they say or what's outlined in these court documents, it's clear to me that they're looking for a doctor that's going to fill their pill need, the medications that they were after. And so to me...
Well, wait, stop there, because I only heard lithium. Like she was trying to get him put on lithium.
Right, but lithium, but then she also mentioned ADHD, ADHD, depression, all the anti-anxiety medications, the ADHD medications, lithium, all those have high dollar value if they're resold on the street.
Gotcha.
And so when I was listening to this, I'm like, it sounds like they're doctor shopping and they're trying to get a doctor on board with her diagnosis of him. And to me, I just smelled a rat right away because I just don't believe a man would subject himself to the humiliation that she was causing him by writing these letters and doing these recordings. And it really raised a lot of red flags for me.
It's very weird. It's very weird. It's like, I am Louis and I have been abusive and I have been mean and I have physically and emotionally abused my girlfriend and I am a narcissist and I don't deserve to live. It was so strange.
So I would be very curious looking at both his and her prescription history to see who were their previous prescribing physicians and have those physicians gotten into any sort of legal trouble as far as diverting drugs or overprescribing, things like that. Because to me, that was my red flag that I picked up on. And, I'm not saying that is what he was doing, but that's something I think should be looked into.
I agree with you. And it's interesting too, because she is like a social worker, a therapist. She has I've been to therapy and they will not ever say, I think that you have narcissistic personality disorder. I think you have bipolar disorder. They won't ever say any of that. They will write all their notes and then have you meet with a psychologist, one of the two that can prescribe the pills. Because there's two different, there's two different people. So what they were doing, if you can hear my dog in the background, I'm sorry, I don't know what she's barking at. The psychiatrist, the therapist will write the recommendation. Psychiatrist will then meet with the patient and decide if that's warranted. So she, as the therapist, was getting him to say these key words, so then he could take that piece of paper to a psychiatrist to get drugs.
Well, and here's the thing. If I was any sort of professional in that field getting this letter from her and all this information from her with her own diagnoses of him, I'd be referring her to the state board. I'd be like, what is this woman doing? This is completely out of line. So there were red flags all over the place.
It's crazy. You guys, if you haven't listened to that, I know I've mentioned it many times. If you haven't listened to that Bravo docket, I think it's a 3-part series they did about
It is.
Louis versus whatever her name was. And what was her
Was it
name?
Vanessa?
Vanessa, because he was also like
Yes.
married to a Vanessa, engaged to a Vanessa, had a girlfriend named Vanessa, and then he got Teresa.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think Teresa is a little bit like Alexis Bellino in some ways, where it's like such blinders towards this man, and I'm going to mold my life for this man that I will blow
Mhm.
up everything else in the process.
Here's Teresa and Alexis. Here's their formula. They don't learn from their past mistakes. They just repeat the same formula. It's just a new guy with a new name,
You're so right.
And I just think there is something to be said. And I know some people don't agree with this, but there is something to be said about being comfortable in your own skin. And it's okay to be alone for a while. Sometimes
Yes.
no guy is better than a bad guy.
Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Oh my God. Well, I didn't even mean to talk about Louis, but when you
That's all
said
right.
about the crossover of the crime, I was like, well, let's talk about somebody who appears to be a criminal. Um, I interviewed Margaret, and she's not afraid of him, and the foodies aren't afraid of him. But it seems like, and I was even asking her about Dolores's
She's
ex.
afraid of him.
It's not that
Dolores is afraid.
I don't know if she's afraid in so much as like Teresa is my friend and I'm just going to be her friend. And obviously we can all see the writing on the wall, what's going to happen here, but I'll just continue to be her friend. But I do think when it involves her child,
Mm-hmm.
Frank Jr., which she was
Mm-hmm.
just like, we're not going to talk about it. But something went down between Louis and Frank Jr., and she's not going to talk about it. And then Margaret said that the phone call that was made to her son was not just like, hey, I know where you work. It was threatening, and the police were involved. It was a threatening phone call that was made to her son at his place of employment. Now, what the threat was, we don't know. She won't say. It's an ongoing open police case, but it was like for him to go on camera and say, I hope Margaret suffers and I hope her son suffers, knowing he also
Gross.
called and threatened him on the phone is wild.
That's
It's,
gross
it's
too. It's
wild.
just gross. I don't know. Seeing Dolores's strong reaction, I guess you could call it. I mean, she lost her shit. She lost her shit in that last episode, Mary Payne. She went postal on poor Margaret.
Yeah. Yes. She was like,
And
I was never invited here. I was like, okay.
yeah, and
Wow.
I mean,
Called her a C word, no
yeah,
less.
I mean,
Yeah.
to me, that was doth protest a little bit too much. I mean, it was a lot. So
I mean, Margaret's like, I
something's
could pull
there.
up the text to show that I invited you. I don't think there's anything wrong with her saying, like, you invited me, but obviously I wasn't going to come. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, you
Right.
invited me, and I said, I didn't even reply, or obviously you knew I wasn't going to come. There's nothing wrong with that. So I don't know. Oh,
But for
but
her to accuse her of lying about it, when Margaret's got the text message, right?
yeah,
She's
yeah,
got it.
yeah. She was like,
So,
okay. Yeah.
yeah, there's something else there. There's something else that, it's the fourth wall is being broken, but we're not being told what's on the other side of that wall.
Yeah. Yeah. God, I hope it all comes out.
Oh, I think it will.
Um,
It always comes out. The dirty laundry always comes
it
out.
always comes out. Yeah.
And it probably will come out when Teresa and Louis break up. I hate to say it.
But I don't even know if she would ever even say it because it took her 2 years to admit that her husband that she had to go to jail for, she still doesn't even, like,
She real
bash
no
him
when she was away, right? When she was
when she went
away.
away. Yeah. Well, let's talk about some other crimey kind of things going on with, the OC, and it's the piling on of Shannon Bedore, and I've said last week, the week before, anytime anybody wants to ask me about it, and I said it on, like, our friend Kate's podcast talking
Mhm.
about,
That was a
you
great
know
episode, by the way.
thank you. Yeah,
Very good. So enlightening to hear what you went through. So enlightening. I mean, it really puts it in
yeah.
perspective for people.
Yeah, it's not easy, and when somebody gets sober, it's not, like, great the next day. It's real
That's
bad
the
after
point.
that
That
too.
is the
Yeah.
point. That is the point. And I thought when you said, I had to look at, like, this isn't the person I married. That,
Right.
and it is really a whole entire new acclimation. And I thought that's something that people don't think about. Like, okay, you've done your 30 days or your 90 days or whatever. Now you're
Mhm.
good. Check the box. It doesn't work that way. It
No.
just doesn't.
No. And I think my sister would say the same with her husband, that the he was he handled it so much differently than even my husband did. So every single person has their own journey. Like her husband, like, was very sensitive to anybody wearing like a beer t-shirt or anything like that, or going to a party where people were just even like a afternoon party, people were having drinks. He was very like wouldn't go. Very sensitive, mad at people if they would wear a beer t-shirt around him, all that kind of stuff. Where my husband's the opposite. He's almost like a pusher. He's almost like, you should have a drink. You should have a drink. I'm like, I don't want a drink.
Mhm.
Because he doesn't grasp that people just don't want to, like, while I'm recording this podcast, why wouldn't you have a drink? Well, because it's 11 o'clock in the morning.
Right. I
You know
don't
what I
need a
mean?
drink. Right.
Yeah, he doesn't grasp it. Whereas my sister's husband kind of went the opposite, where he was like, I can't be around it at all.
Okay.
So everybody handles it differently. And so you just sort of like have to get to know the person again. And I kind of feel like with Shannon in this situation is she's sort of getting to know herself. Like you see pictures of her when she first married David Bador. I mean, she looks completely different, but
Mhm.
you have to imagine that young person before she had those 3 kids and lived in that mansion with the crystals in the wall and all that.
Yeah.
To her, she doesn't know herself anymore at all. And now she's on this show and that's her identity. So who is she if she's not fun drunk Shannon, right?
Right.
Who is she?
Right.
I think that's it's interesting. I think that's why she'll never be off our televisions, because it's fascinating.
It is fascinating. And she's another one who puts way too much stock in my worth is really defined if I have a man in my life.
Right. Right. And I hope that she's seeing with this latest John Jansen situation that's she's not missing out on a prize with old Johnny
No, she
J.
she
Yeah.
repeated the pattern, just like we were talking about. She
Yes.
got another one. And I think Alexis now has inherited Shannon's problem.
Oh,
She's got
she's
John
so proud of
Jansen.
it. She's so proud of it.
It's kind of gross. It's great. And all the extortion threats with the videos. And I don't like that at all. I don't like that one bit.
Okay, well, I want to ask you about that because speaking of the Bravo docket, I was listening to it this morning, and I'm going to listen to the whole thing, but I was trying to like zip through because I wanted to talk to you about it.
Mhm.
So they're talking about this, and I want to ask you about this from your expertise. So they're saying that Tamara went on another podcast. I don't know what it was. They played the clip and saying that the ring footage is from outside the house, facing out, like we all have. And because the ring footage is facing out, like that's why if your UPS man drops off a package and does a dance, you can put it on the internet because it's like reasonable expectation of privacy. Like
Right,
you
right,
see the ring camera and you dance in front of it, somebody's going to put it on TikTok, whatever.
right.
But there were cameras inside the house and inside and outside. And it's not just one incident. He has footage over months of time. So listen, we have a ring camera. If something like I was just checking it right now to see like why the freaking dogs are barking. But
Mhm.
if I saw like a weird deer in my yard,
Mhm.
maybe I would save that to like send to my kids later. But I'm not going into my footage of my ring camera and saving snippets. You could save them all day long.
Mhm.
You could if you've
Mhm.
got the bandwidth for that, literally. But
Mhm.
they said these are months of time of indoor and outdoor ring camera. So number one, why is he saving that? So they're broken up and maybe he's like, she's crazy. And just in case I have to get a restraining order against her, I want to do this. Okay. But they were saying that the laws in California about filming, if someone has been told that there are cameras, and they know they're being filmed and there's no audio, it should be okay. Like if Shannon knows there are cameras in the house, there's no audio and he's got video of her, that's a reasonable expectation of privacy. She said a good example they said was like if your neighbors are on the lawn screaming at each other and you get your phone and video it, that's a reasonable expectation of privacy because they're on their front lawn and you're in your yard. But if you zoom in or get like a boom mic or a listening device, then you're invading their privacy. Like if you get a drone and you go into their house.
Correct.
So there are a lot of rules here. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes of it. If there is months of footage from inside and outside the house, why? Why are you trying to take her down? Like,
Well, it
why?
shows premeditation. It
Uh-huh.
surely does show premeditation.
And
And
he's threatening
yes,
it on
yes,
television, like blackmail.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Now, I know in California, I don't believe that's a two-party state. So there are some states, like Pennsylvania, for example, you cannot record someone, without two parties agreeing to the audio recording.
I think
Some states,
California is a two-party state. And the reason I
okay,
know that is, go with me here on this journey. Remember when Jax was with Brittany and he had sex with Faith where the old lady was asleep in the next room?
okay.
Okay. Faith recorded Jax saying he doesn't even like Brittany. He's not attracted to her. She recorded him saying that after their lovemaking.
Uh-huh.
But they played it for Brittany, but we couldn't hear it because Jax had not given consent to be recorded.
Oh.
So that's why, and they explained, Bravo Docket or somebody explained it at that, probably wasn't Bravo Docket, that's too long ago, but somebody explained it on a podcast. Oh yeah, in California, if both people don't know they're being recorded, you can't put it in court or play it on a reality
Well,
show.
that's what tripped up Linda Tripp in the whole
Oh,
Monica Lewinsky thing,
uh-huh.
is that she was recording Monica Lewinsky without Monica Lewinsky's permission or knowledge, and that was a two-party situation.
Mm.
So it does, that kind of thing comes into play. Also, the other thing I've heard of is with paparazzi. They can be like out in a public domain. And if you're out in like outside, if they have a long lens, they can take a
Uh-huh.
picture of you on your back deck or on your back, by your pool. But they cannot use their Zoom to photograph you inside your house. That is where you have a reasonable your
Expectation.
expectation. I'm like, it's
Mm.
not explanation. What's the word I'm looking for? Expectation of privacy. So, regarding Shannon, I think with him, I think one, it shows he was plotting against her all along. That for him, there was a financial motivation. Like, hey, this could be worth some money. I can hold this over her.
Wow.
And I really think that's gross. And boy, if I
Very.
was Alexis, the first question I'd be asking is, all right, well, what do you got on me? What
Well,
are you
let's
going to
take all
use
these
against
cameras
me?
down. Yeah.
Exactly. So gross, just gross.
But, I think like cameras inside your house, okay, it's one thing if you have a nanny cam, and I think the people that I know that like have little kids or have nannies, that the nanny knows that there's a nanny cam, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when I babysit for my niece, she's got this cute little baby George. When I go over there, so you go in the kids now, and what they do is they have like a little camera that's over the bed.
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
it watches them sleep. So then you can like pull it up on your iPad or whatever. My
Right.
God, I would have never slept ever in my life if
Oh,
I
I
had that when
wouldn't
my kids
either.
were
I'd be
alive. I would
watching
have
it
just
all
like
the
watching
time.
it all the
Yeah.
time. But when you walk in the room with the baby and you get in the rocking chair and you read the book and the baby's like, crying or whatever, you put him in the bed and then you leave and you come back and you're doing the nighttime routine.
Yeah.
All of that is on camera because that little camera does get the bed, but it also gets the whole room.
Yep.
So, it only took me one time to kind of forget about it. I'm not obviously not in there doing anything terrible to my great nephew. I'm snuggling him and forcing him to love me. But you're in there and you think, yeah, it would be real easy to forget that it's in there. So if Shannon knows there's cameras all in the house, probably focused at the doors and things for break-ins, but they're
Right.
going in and out in front of them. Yeah, of course. And she's used to being filmed all the time.
Right.
Yeah, she's going to act like herself, whatever arguments they may have. But why is he keeping it? What a dick.
Yeah. Jerk. I mean, I have indoor cameras in my house, and like you said, they're pointed directly at all my major entrances just
Yeah.
for, home invasion purposes and just to
Yeah.
see the comings and goings and that sort of thing. But yes, you do forget that you're being recorded. And, there's also a certain thing like her drinking is a medical issue.
Yeah.
And so if she's got a disease, I mean, if she had cancer, would he be exposing videos of her talking about, her cancer treatment or her feelings about her cancer? I mean, if she's talking about, I shouldn't be drinking or I am drinking and you're not going to
Yeah.
tell me what to do. If that's a disease for her, does that become a medical issue? And then is that also exploiting her in another
Mhm.
legal sense?
Mhm. All of it is so gross, and I just think that everybody went into this season thinking like, "Oh, we're gonna, like, look so great because 'cause we're gonna, like, expose her." Everybody looks like an asshole.
I
Everybody.
think so. I think so. I do think Jen, the yoga
Yeah.
girl, I do. She's a little, slow as far as responsibility and
Yeah. Mhm.
getting her feet on the ground for herself. But I do think she's kind, and I do think she has called out, "Hey, this isn't nice. This isn't cool." And I
Yeah.
do appreciate the balance of that because the rest has just been so nasty.
Yeah. Yeah, and you got Vicky coming in as the voice of reason. You're like, "Wow."
Wow.
Yeah.
Now we've
Um,
really hit a new
I do
low.
think and I do think it is true that Vicky has enabled her a little bit. When they're in the car and Vicky's like, "It's okay, you can drink, you're not driving." If Vicky, in my opinion, Vicky should have been like, "I'm gonna tell you right now, don't drink in front of these bitches. If you're gonna
Yeah.
have a drink, have it at home, have it at my house. Don't drink in front of them. Don't give them anything to talk about.
Don't give them the
Don't give the
leverage. Exactly.
don't give the public something to talk about. Any dinner that you're doing on this show, you should just be like, no, I'm just gonna have soda water or whatever."
Well, exactly. I was just going to say, just have a club soda and a lime. It's
Yeah,
only a few hours out of your life. When the car takes you back home, have your glass of wine or your tequila then. You know,
yeah, yeah.
I mean, but that to me indicates, all right, if you can't even film for a few hours and
Yes,
order a
that's
club soda, then to
yeah.
me, that does indicate she's got a problem.
And she's
Whether
looking to Vicky to reaffirm that it's
justify
it's
it.
okay. It's okay if I just have
Yes.
the one drink. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, and also the language around like most times when I drink, I only have two drinks at the most three. Well, like a couple of weeks ago, it was like I haven't had more than two drinks. And now it's like at the most I've had three. Well, any doctor will tell you whenever they ask you how many drinks you have, whatever number you give them, they double it.
Oh,
because
easily.
because people lie.
Easily.
I
Exactly.
had to fill out an online form. I'm doing this Prenuvo scan, which I'm so excited about. You just when they scan your whole body and tell
Oh
you
God.
everything.
Are you
Yeah.
scared?
No, I'm excited. I'm
Okay.
excited.
Okay.
I'm so excited. I probably should be scared. But so I had to fill out an online thing and it really kind of goes through your history. It was very easy to fill out. But one of the questions was, of course, tobacco use. Of course, I was like, yes, I smoked when I was a teenager. And it's like, what were the years that you smoked? I had to really think about that. I was like, I guess like 1986 to like 1992. Like, I don't really know. It was like from right before I was done with high school to right after college. And
Hmm.
also, it was like, how many packs a day? I was like, uh, one every 2 weeks. I mean,
Yeah, it
like,
was like after the bars. That's when we
yeah.
smoked.
So
It
I
was
was,
that late 80s, 90s.
so you're
Right.
trying to like put that in to be accurate because I want them to have the accurate information. But another one of the questions was, how much do you drink? And so I was like, okay, I want to be honest, but I don't want them to double it. If I'm honest, I don't want them to
Yeah.
double it. So
Yeah.
then I'll just half it if I think they're going to double it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be honest. I probably have a drink 3 or 4 times a week. Some weeks I may have none, but other weeks I may drink every single night if I'm on a vacation.
Right. Right.
So I was like 3 to 4 nights a week. And then I was like 1 to 2 drinks. And I was like, okay, but there are nights when I have, and I spent so much time thinking about it. And I'm not an alcoholic. So Shandon really should be thinking about it, is my point.
Absolutely. And I mean, when you just to go to your point, if you're a wine drinker, you're not pouring a 4-ounce Weight Watcher glass, all right? Most of us are pouring.
two, two
Yeah,
points. 2 points on Weight
yeah,
Watchers.
exactly.
Yeah.
Most of us are pouring glasses that are technically considered the size of two drinks in
Yeah,
one
probably.
glass.
Yeah.
So, that factors into it too. But yes, I mean, if that was a concern, I certainly wouldn't be drinking on camera
I
at
wouldn't
all.
either. I wouldn't
Mm-mm.
either. I find it.
Or, I mean, can't you have a mocktail? I mean, I make this mocktail with non-alcoholic ginger beer, a little bit of lime juice, and then I cut up some jalapenos and put that in there and I stir it
Oh,
up. I don't even put the tequila in it. I'll
Yeah.
just have that as a mocktail. And I can have that and not miss the tequila. And I'll put it in a Moscow Mule cup and nobody will know I'm not drinking. But
Yeah.
I do that because, I've got kids all over the place. I got to be able to drive and not worry about drinking. So that's what I
Yeah.
do, but why can't she have a mocktail? That's what I don't get it.
Well, I think your point is pretty valid that if she knows how it's going to look on camera and she's going to have a drink anyway, and she's got Vicky going, it's okay. You're not driving. You can have one drink. Like, you're not an alcoholic. You can do what you want. You're right. Yeah. Like,
Mhm.
everybody simmer down. Like, I mean, it's just.
Well, and you made a really good point on Kate's show when you guested on her episode about how people who are overweight, they know it. They
Yes.
know.
They
They
don't
know
need you.
they shouldn't have dessert 4
Yes.
or 5 nights a week. They know they should cut back on the sugars and the carbs and the
Yes.
alcohol.
Yes.
So that's a good point.
Yes. I mean, my husband will tell you, like, he was very aware he had a drinking problem. He said he would sit down in his chair at night and be like, I definitely should not have this drink,
Mhm.
or in the morning or whenever it was. Or, you go to bed going, okay, well, tomorrow I'm only going to do this. And you make all the promises to yourself
Mhm.
or to whoever's in the house or whatever's going on. You make the promises on this. It is very similar to when Shep on the Southern Charm reunion said he wasn't really drinking anymore, just beer. What?
Yeah. Yeah. No, you
You
either
know,
are. It's like, are you pregnant or not? You either
right.
are or you're not. Right.
Yeah. And Craig's
Right.
like, that's still drinking,
Right.
So you're just trying to say like, oh, if I only drink beer, you do so much bargaining with yourself, and, I've been there too. I've been like, okay, we're at the beach like 7 nights. Okay. Yeah. I really don't need to have wine every night. But then I'm like, but I'm on vacation.
I know,
And then you
exactly.
bargain with yourself, and you're like, this
Mhm.
is, it's just like you're saying, my thing that I love to have, it make me, feel like I'm having a drink. Like, why do I even care to feel like I'm having a drink? What does it matter? But I'll make like a Tervis tumbler and I fill it with my sparkling, it's like black raspberry. I don't know what it is. It's a LaCroix drink.
Mhm.
And I fill it with that. And then I put in some Mio in it just to make it extra like berry flavored. I love the Mio berry.
Uh-huh.
Spin that in there. And then it's like a fizzy. And normally I would also put vodka in it.
Yeah.
But I don't put vodka in it. I'm like, I'm enjoying a refreshing beverage. But why
Yeah.
do I care? Why not just drink water? I don't know.
Well,
You know?
yeah. I mean, I think people always say salads taste better when someone else makes them for you. And so when 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 you don't have to be the one to cut up all the vegetables,
What a
so,
great point.
seriously,
Yeah.
And so I kind of think, yeah, you could just drink water, but it's more fun to have it all made up with the fruity little berries in there and
Yeah.
everything. I think that's kind of the same principle.
I've never thought about that. I never make a salad at home because it's never good. It's not as good as a restaurant salad.
Well, see, I eat a salad just about every day. And so to me, I've kind of
You've perfected your
I have.
salad.
I've got my salads. I've got my
Yeah.
Caesar salad. I got my salmon salad. I've got my chicken salad. I've got my whole system down. But I'm always on the lookout for a good new salad. And so I kind of think that should be like, okay, if you shouldn't be drinking, find what you can drink
Yeah.
that can be fun.
Yeah. When we
that
go to
works for
restaurants,
you.
my husband loves a mocktail. He gets very happy when they have a non-alcoholic or whatever menu. And he's always like, oh, I'll try this. I'll try that. And, I was like, I don't know why, but he loves to just try these new drinks. And my sister and her husband, whenever they go to restaurants and there's a mocktail menu, they always get one because they're like, we're trying to support the mocktail industry.
Yeah. Well, I think
Yeah.
it's a good alternative, and quite frankly, like I said, if I'm with my neighbors and I have my Moscow Mule cup, nobody has any idea I'm not drinking.
Yeah. And again, if you weren't, they wouldn't care. It's just sort of like, why explain it? So back to the
Right.
Shannon, your point is so valid. Like for the 2.5 hours, they have to sit at that restaurant. But believe me when I tell you, when she was getting hair and makeup done, she was having a drink and she knew what those 2 drinks were. She knew her 1 drink at the restaurant. She knew her 3 when she was going to get home.
When
You're
she
counting
gets
them.
home. When
Yes.
she gets home. She's like,
Yeah.
well, I'm only having 2 on camera. We're
Right.
not seeing what's going on before and after.
Yeah. By the way, just have 0 on camera, and then we won't have to
Yeah,
talk about it. But,
exactly.
like, we're on Shannon's side. We were like, "Please, girl, pull it
Yes.
together." Remember when you could fall asleep in your makeup and still wake up glowing and beautiful like a young little nubile princess? Well, those days are over, at least for me, guys. I'm a lady of a certain age. And if you're noticing changes in your skin tone and texture and seeing those fine lines and wrinkles, you're not alone. But here's the good news. Today's sponsor, OneSkin, has developed a skincare line that targets these changes where they start, and that's your cells. That's like underneath it all, okay? Here's what you're going to do. You're going to cleanse and pat your skin dry and apply the OneSkin topical supplement twice a day. If you have products you already like that you just can't live without, their topical face, eye, body, the shield, that's the sunscreen, they can all be used with the other products and easily fit into your routine. What I do, wash my face and put the OneSkin on first, let it kind of dry up a little bit, and then put whatever I want right on top because I've got some things I really love. And I also use the eye topical supplement as well. Their topical supplements are powered by their proprietary peptide, OS1. It's a scientifically proven to target the dysfunctional cells that start to accumulate around age 30. These are the cells that make your skin just like dull and dry and more prone to those lines and wrinkles as we get older. All of OneSkin's products for the face and the body are backed by lab and clinical studies, and they have more than 8,000 five-star reviews. You guys, I use my topical supplement on the back of my hands because I'm starting to really notice that's a place that I'm aging, and I don't want my hands to look like that. My gosh. For a limited time, you can try OneSkin for 15% off using the code PINKSHADE when you check out. So you're going to go to oneskin.co, and when you check out, use code PINKSHADE for 15% off. Again, I am recommending the facial topical supplement and the eye cream. The body stuff is great. The sunscreen is great, but these are the ones I recommend. So go to oneskin.co for 15% off. Use code PINKSHADE and then tell me what you think. Thanks. I did think it was interesting this week what Gina said, which was when she got her DUI, she didn't stop drinking. She goes, because I didn't think I had a problem. And then was it Tamara that was talking to her that said, well, you didn't have a drinking problem? And she goes, yes, I did. Yes, I did. She said I wasn't an alcoholic, but I definitely had a problem with drinking because it controlled me more than I controlled it. And I realized that it was Tamara she was talking to, who I think
Mm-hmm.
that sort of made her like, oh, I thought after you got your DUI, you just stopped drinking. She was like, no, I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So
She
I
was
liked
using
that.
alcohol as a coping mechanism,
Yes.
which is the whole discussion that kind of gets brushed to the side. You
Yeah.
know, the fact that you may not be, there's the alcoholics that are drinking, a whole bottle of vodka a day. But
Right.
then there's also the functioning alcoholics that are
Yep.
drinking excessively, but doing it to cope because they're not handling their emotions. They're not
Yeah.
processing what's really going on in other areas of their lives. And I think that was Gina. She had all the stress with the marriage and, all
Yeah.
these little kids, and he's in LA, she's in the OC, she's away from her family in New York, all these factors going on. And
And
she,
her life is under a microscope on a TV show all of a
yes,
sudden. Yeah.
yes, yes. And she was drinking to cope, drinking
Self
to cope.
medicating.
Yes,
Do you like the new girl, Katie?
I do like her.
I like her too.
I like the fact she's not afraid of Heather Dubrow.
I love it.
I love it. In fact, I would love to see her put Heather Dubrow in her place. Like really, really just.
You know what I would love? I would love for Heather Dubrow to go over to the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and have
And get
Sutton put her
eaten
in her
alive.
place. And
Exactly. Exactly.
Sutton be like, well, I mean, money is money. I get $360,000 a month. It's
Yes.
spousal support. Can
Let
you
me tell you,
imagine?
Katie,
So much
no,
money. So much
no,
money.
I
So
can't.
much money.
Katie scored major points with me last week though when she told Heather, or she made that statement like Heather needs to put her hands down. That is what drives me the most nuts about
That
Heather
is
Dubrow.
funny.
It's
I
like
never even
sit
thought about
on
that.
your
Yeah.
hands. It drives me nuts. If you watch her, she's always like doing, and pointing at people. It's like, stop, girl, make your point. Sometimes the problem with Heather Dubrow, in my opinion, sometimes I agree with what her point is. It's her delivery. It's her tone. It's her mannerisms. It's those hand
It's
gestures.
her
It's just
tone.
so much. And let me
It's
tell
her
you what.
tone.
Kate Casey and I talk about this all the time. The best Bravo show ever would be Heather Dubrow and her mother in therapy together. That would be fantastic to
Yes.
unpack all that.
Yes. Yeah, and then
But
Shannon Bedore and her dad. Yeah.
oh yes, yes.
Yes.
I do think Katie's good because she's not afraid to, call out Heather. I thought that was, very I mean, even if you don't believe that the text message she got was legitimate, I do think she's got Heather's number. And that the conversation she had with Sutton was a lot more in depth than what we saw,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
I love
So,
Sutton.
and clearly Heather is gunning for Beverly Hills. Don't you agree? Like she's trying to lateral over to that show.
Yeah, and I think she should. I think she's a better fit over there, and I think it would be incredible. Andy Cohen, hear our prayers. Yes.
Oh yeah, can you see her and Erica getting into it? Look out.
I could just see her trying to be richer than everybody else, and then you've got somebody like Sutton. Even Kyle, no
Mhm.
matter what's happening with Mauricio, pretty rich. Okay, that reminds me, you were gonna tell
Yes.
me something about
Yes, he's
Mauricio
been
has a lawsuit or
sued.
something.
He's been sued for 3.5 million in allegedly obtaining PPP loans during the pandemic that he didn't need, according to this lawsuit. That
Really?
for covering
3.5?
3.5 million. Now he denies it. He denies, no, we took a hit in business just like everybody else during the pandemic. But the lawsuit alleges, well, you didn't really need this because you're selling multi-million dollar properties. Can you
Mhm.
really not make payroll? And he said, well, yes, we had to let people go. We had to, put people on hiatus during the pandemic. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this. But I do think, the world is kind of catching up to the pandemic fraud that went on.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's
We're seeing
very
that on we're seeing
interesting.
it on Love After Lockup, actually. There's a woman who
Okay.
runs a tax accounting firm, and she's getting in trouble for those PPP loans during pandemic as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
addition to her husband's in jail, that's another problem she's got. Um, the range of shit that I cover. So let's okay, tell me about the Tom Girardi. So I know he got sentenced to prison. So what's
Well,
happening there?
so he was just convicted at trial. His trial ended last week
Okay.
and it was in federal court. So it was a little frustrating for people like us who like to follow these trials and normally stream the state trials.
Oh, and
Federal
you can't
court
in
can't
federal.
do that in federal.
Okay.
So we had to wait for and they weren't allowed to live tweet. Normally
So it's just
reporters can
old school waiting
old
for
school
somebody to run out.
journalism.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
run
yeah.
out. So we had to wait every day. But essentially, what we found out is that there were other employees at the firm that were aware that, look,
Of
all these
course.
clients are calling in wanting their money. And Tom Girardi decided who got some money and when, but it's never the full settlement. It was always like, well, we'll pay Peter and then next week we'll pay Paul. And it was a massive shell game. Like, I'll take money from this client to pay this one. And then I'll pay, client number 2 once I get money in from client number 3, that sort of thing.
So exhausting.
It was exhausting. And
Yeah.
eventually that all falls apart when you owe people more than what you have coming in, or
Mhm.
you go spend your money on luxury art and Cartier jewelry and these private jets. And then, there isn't enough money in the coffers. And he was touching money that he shouldn't have been touching.
Right.
There's very specific rules about law firm monies and IOLTA accounts and things like that, where law firms are not supposed to touch that money to make payroll or anything like that. So we had this testimony from employees. We had testimony from the victims claiming, look, I emailed, I called. There was always walls put up by secretaries or administrative staff blocking my access to Tom Girardi. And then we heard from him. He actually took the stand.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. And from the way it was described, he would act very confused. Like his attorney would say, what's my name? And he'd say, mad, insane, I don't know, like make completely non-cogent. Wouldn't acknowledge he knew his own attorney's name. But then a few minutes later, when he was asked about, well, did you take this money? this is terrible. I would never do that. If I was aware of this, I would have that person indicted. Suddenly, boom, he's cogent. Anytime it came to what was your onus or what was your responsibility, he was suddenly cogent and he knew what he was talking about. It's this other guy's fault. It's the chief financial officer's problem. He's the one that stole from the firm. But
Hmm.
then at other times, it was, okay, what day is it? Who's the president? Things like that. So you can't walk on
But
both sides of
but
the fence.
but that is kind of true with people with dementia. My mother-in-law had dementia, and she could kind of be having a conversation, but then like wouldn't understand how to eat with her fork or who you were, but then could like very clearly talk about past the salt and pepper. You know what I mean? It was all so I can see how some of that could be true. And he is like in his late 80s.
He's 85. So I think one of the things that the prosecutor stressed is, okay, maybe today he's got
Today he doesn't know, but he did a year
but he
ago,
did
2 years
10
ago.
years ago, and
Yes.
that's it. The course of the alleged illegal conduct was over the course of a decade. And so
Okay.
they have him from way back in the day, talking cogently to these clients saying, oh no, this is fine. No worries. I got the money here, all that kind of stuff. So the jury came back in less than a day. Like they deliberated for a couple hours one day, went home, came back the next day and found him guilty on all 4 counts of wire fraud.
Wow.
Now, he will be sentenced in December. He still faces another trial next year related to that air crash
Yeah.
where all those settlement funds were not given to the victims' families from that Lions Air crash that were paid out by Boeing. So we'll see if that eventually goes to trial, if what kind of sentence he's going to get here.
Mm.
I don't think there's going to be a lot of sympathy for him from the judge. I think the prosecutors are going to say, look, he needs to go. He'll go away to a prison hospital if he
Well,
really
that was
does
my
have.
question. Well, that's my
Yeah,
question. What do they
yeah.
do in a case like this? Yes, he could be a murderer or whatever, but he does have dementia, so he can't just be put in gin pop in a federal prison. He's got
Right. He would go to
right.
a prison facility with a hospital. So, and there are those. They're not as convenient for a lot of prisoners, like a lot of family members, and may not be close to where your family lives. I had a person that I convicted, a case I had, and he was addicted to ketamine. And
Mm.
he refused to acknowledge he had this addiction, went into the prison population, very first night, had a massive heart attack, had
Oh,
to be life flighted to Cleveland Clinic. From there, they're like, all right, well, he's got cardiac issues, he's got addiction issues. We can't send him back to federal prison in West Virginia. So he ended up getting transferred all the way out to Massachusetts. Well, that made it a lot harder for his family to go visit him while he was
yeah.
incarcerated.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff plays into it. But
Wow.
Tom Girardi, now, one of the things that came out that was interesting to me was about Erica and the $20 million. I had always heard, and maybe this was just my mistake, but I had heard the firm had transferred $20 million to her LLC bank account. During the trial, that is not what was alleged during the trial. The testimony that came out during the trial was that she had $20 million in expenses that simply she gave the bills to the firm and the firm paid out of the settlement funds. So that's a lot different than wiring money to her. So I can
I'm
kind
telling
of
you all along,
see.
I have never thought that she was in on this at all. I think she just was married to a rich guy, everything got paid for, and
Mhm.
she didn't ask questions. That's what I
I
think.
think that's it too. I really do. Now, she may still have some tax liability if, depending on how the IRS looks at it, like, well, technically, if he's still paying all those bills for you, and we're talking millions of dollars in, wardrobe and hair and
Yeah.
glam and all that, is that considered income because you're having this paid for by your husband, or is it a gift? And did you report a gift on your taxes? Did you report that as
Mm.
income? That I could potentially maybe see, but again, I
She
haven't
didn't do her
reviewed
own
your tax
taxes.
well,
She
that's
had
another thing.
yeah,
You
she had Tom's
rely
guy
on
do her
people.
taxes. Yes.
Exactly. So that person's in a position of trust. It's just like you or I. If we hire an accountant, I rely on them for their expertise in this arena. I'm not a tax attorney. I'm not an accountant.
So you're not liable if your tax attorney screws it up. Like, I mean, we have a tax guy. If he screws it up, does the IRS get to come and tell me, hey, you owe me $1 million? But
Yeah,
we're
they
like,
can
wait, we
tell
paid
you.
this guy.
Yes,
Yeah.
they can tell you that, but it's not necessarily a criminal intent. That's the thing. That's where you
Okay.
have a protection there because you did go to someone that you believe to be lawful to help you with this situation. So, but yes, so Tom Girardi was convicted.
It's
so
a
that was
mess.
big news. Now, my understanding was Beverly Hills was filming up until just a couple weeks ago. I would think if they were smart, they would have kept cameras going to get the reaction of what does Erica think? Is she following the trial while it's going on? Is she going back to her hotel room in St. Lucia at night after filming all day and reading up on the trial? Is she talking to anyone about the trial? What was her reaction upon his conviction? Are we going to see some real emotions? Is she going to say, you know, I'm glad for the victims, but sad for me, sad for him, sad for his children? What kind of balance are we going to see? And what are all the other ladies going to say?
Prediction, it'll be the very last episode, and cameras will go down, they'll have their last party, and then they'll do that add-on 20 minutes. They'll do that add-on 20 minutes where they'll put the black screen of death up. After filming, Tom Girardi, da-da-da, here's what the lady said. And it'll all be all of them like, oh my God, he was convicted. And then it'll be like Erica, like, well, I can't believe it happened. All right. So that's what's happening in Bravo. And then over on your podcast, Caught in My Web, of course, you've been covering extensively Karen Reed. Now, something recently happened. Now, I listen to it every day.
Okay.
But
thank you, by the way.
Yeah, I listen because I got to keep up with what's going on. But the Karen Reed, they just had something where they tell me it was the latest thing where they said they cannot take something off the docket for the next trial.
So essentially, her trial ended in a mistrial.
Right.
At the beginning of July. Her attorneys were contacted by numerous jurors who said, look, we were not deadlocked on all 3 counts. There were 2 counts where we did agree as collectively as a jury that she was not guilty. That we were unanimous on those 2 counts.
Is this usual for the jurors to contact?
This is a disaster.
I've never heard of this.
This whole thing is a disaster. Okay. Number one, the jury did not fill out their verdict forms. So none of the paperwork that would have said check the box on what you think on count 1 or count 3 was done. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2, when the jurors wrote a note to the judge, they never expressed, hey, it's only one issue we're stuck on, not all 3. So that's a problem. Number 3, the content of the note they did deliver to the judge was, we're hopelessly deadlocked. So the judge took that as, well, I have no reason to believe you did have any unanimous decision based on what I read from you.
They're hopelessly deadlocked on one of the 3.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
But the judge reading the note would think, I don't have any reason to think you had reached any agreement on anything. I read your note, it says you're deadlocked.
Wow.
So ultimately the mistrial was declared. The defense is contacted, and then the prosecution isn't doing anything. So then the jurors start contacting the prosecution saying, hey, this is true. You need to file notice with the court that we're telling you to. Ultimately, she had a hearing in August where the defense filed a motion to dismiss counts 1 and 3. Count 1 was the second-degree murder charge. Count 3 was leaving the scene of an accident involving death. They wanted at least those counts dismissed, or they wanted the ability to go out and talk with the jurors. Did you reach a consensus on count 1 and count 3? Ultimately, the judge just came back right before she went on vacation and said, no, there was no verdict that was reached. There was no consensus. There's nothing recorded on these documents. Nothing was said in court. The defense, you didn't argue when I declared a mistrial, not before, not afterwards.
It's over.
So it's over. So where we're at is Karen Reed is supposed to go on trial in January on all 3 counts again. And the prosecution's like, yeah, we're retrying her. This is causing huge uproar in Massachusetts because a lot of people think she shouldn't have been charged with all 3 counts in the first place. Number 2, there's so much alleged corruption by multiple troopers, Massachusetts state troopers and Canton Police Department officers in the Karen Reed case. So a lot of people say, how can you have another trial when there's all these problems? Some of these troopers, since the mistrial was declared, have been put on internal affairs investigations. The main investigator has been suspended. He's most likely going to be terminated. And then there is also this parallel case in the same community, the Sandra Birchmore case, where for years it has been alleged that the district attorney's office, the same district attorney's office that is prosecuting Karen Reed, it's alleged the district attorney's office looked the other way for a dirty cop who groomed Sandra Birchmore as a
Horrible.
minor,
Horrible.
sexually assaulted her, and then killed her when she became
Murdered her.
pregnant with his baby the night before his wife was due to give birth to their third child. So all that's going on in this same community. And so people not only think the troopers and the local police are dirty, they think the district attorney's dirty too. And that the district attorney is framing or is out to get Karen Reed in order to cover for the cop who owned the home where police officer John O'Keefe was found dead.
Mm-hmm.
So all of it, it's corruption, it's
And it's like the medical
murder.
examiner with that Sandra
Yes.
Birchmore thing. Like all of it, you're like, just layers and
Yes.
layers, and it weaves and it weaves, and it's like,
Yes.
God bless.
Yes, because the medical examiner in Sandra Birchmore, he or she ruled that it was a suicide originally. Well, then Sandra's family did an independent autopsy with the famed pathologist, Dr. Michael Baden. And he said, no, the hyoid bone is broken in her neck. That's a sign of strangulation. I think this is murder. Well, then the FBI, who have been investigating, they also hired their own expert who also came back and said, yes, her hyoid bone is broken. She's got an imprint on her chest, which indicates an assault. She had a necklace broken around her neck, not broke at the clasp, but the chain was broken. Additionally, she had abrasions on her nose. So the FBI expert also concluded that Sandra was murdered. Now, one of the issues that comes up is in the Karen Reed case, there were text messages with the where he said, oh, rookie mistake. You got to put pressure on that medical examiner to get them to change the ruling. So the question is, was there pressure from law enforcement on the medical examiner in the Sandra Birchmore case to get that medical examiner to rule it a suicide so no one would look at the cop?
It's so gross. It's so gross. And to think that, what if you're just like regular Joe Schmo, living in this town, and you're like,
Well,
God, I hope nothing happens to anybody in my family because nobody here can be trusted.
That's the argument of all the Karen Reed supporters. They're like, this could be any of us.
Anybody.
Yes.
It could be anybody. It is so crazy how deep it goes and how layered it is. And listening to your episodes about the Sandra Birchmore thing is so upsetting. This girl that was like went into like a camp for like wannabe detectives when she was young. Like, this is a fun summer camp that the police department does. Gets groomed by these cops who end up having sex with her way underage, 14.
Yes.
And later get her pregnant and then murder her. And then I don't want you to go into it because this is supposed to be a fun Bravo podcast.
Yes.
But there is like a allegation of necrophilia.
Yes.
And when you just think it can't get worse, it gets worse.
It does. It's very, very disturbing. And, essentially, it wasn't just the cop who's alleged to have killed her, but also his twin brother, who was a police officer.
Was also having sex with her.
Yes, another high-ranking police officer who also is an attorney, a canine handler, the dog control person in the local community. He would get her an animal if she would pleasure him, in exchange. I'll give you an animal if you go down on me. So,
disgusting.
Gross. Just gross.
Disgusting.
Yeah, this poor girl. And, she comes from a vulnerable family, single family. Her mother died, her grandmother died, her aunt died, all before she's 23. So she's very vulnerable. And she was so excited about this pregnancy. And that's another thing. She had plans for a baby shower, plans for a
Yeah.
gender reveal. She had bought a car seat. I mean, all these things that show she did not appear to be, had the intent to self harm.
No, it's awful. It's awful. You guys, you should go and listen to Jody's coverage of this. Just, I do like that at the beginning you're like, okay, this is going to be upsetting for XYZ. So if you're going to be upset about this, don't watch it. One more thing I want to ask you about before we have to go. Did you watch the documentary Taken Together?
No, that's my next one. We're
Okay.
starting to cover that next week.
Because I went on this podcast, Crime Scene, SEEN, is part of the Rob Has a Podcast network. It's Sarah and Mari do this thing, and they cover these documentaries. And they asked me to come on. They're like, "Are you okay?" Because it does involve, these terrible situations with children, obviously being murdered and all this. I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I could talk about anything." I was like, "Are we supposed to be funny? Because I don't know if I can be funny." And they're like, "No." It's like, okay, fine. So I'm on that podcast talking about it. It's a really well done documentary. The guy that did it's his first documentary, but he was like a videographer in town and been following this case since like 2016, like for a long time. So he has these interviews like 2016, 2020, 2021 of all the people. So they're like aging as he's interviewing them about the two girls that went missing together. But there is sort of a switcheroo in it that we said on our podcast that we did about it. Wish there could have been a whole nother episode about this. There is a switcheroo in it that links it possibly to the Delphi murders. Now, there's no reason to think it is, but it was very interesting, and I'll be interested when you cover it to get your knowledge on it, that they're in the United States in the last 30 years, there's only 17 cases of two girls being kidnapped together. So that's and
Interesting.
how they were mostly all in the same area. And one of them is the Delphi, all the way back to when this happened, like in 2016, with the case of these cousins that are taken. So I'll be very interested to hear your recap of it when you do it, because it is really interesting. When you hear that, you're like, whoa, I guess you don't hear of that too often because somebody
Well,
escapes or somebody doesn't get in the car or whatever. Yeah.
right, the Springfield III. That's another one that, three were taken. Two of it was a mother and two girls who had just gone to a graduation party. Where are they? So there are these other cases. Now, Delphi, that's due to go to trial in October. And
Mm-hmm.
we'll see if it happens. The judge just made a big ruling last week in that case saying that all the alleged confessions by Richard Allen, the man accused of murdering the two girls in Delphi, all his confessions can come in at trial.
Can come in.
Can, yes. So
Who did he confess to? Like jailhouse snitches?
So he was on a recorded line at the jail. So he confessed to his wife, his mother. He confessed to guards. He confessed to other jailhouse snitches. He
What a dumbass.
confessed to clergy.
What?
Yes. So there are multiple confessions. So we'll see. And the last big ruling that we're waiting on in that case is the defense wants to argue that these Odenistic,
Mm-hmm.
basically
Satan worshipers.
Worshipers, and basically it's a white supremacist group that has basically hijacked Odinism, this Norse religion. They're trying to claim this third-party defense, that they did it, not Richard Allen, their client. Well, the judge has to decide, will they be allowed to argue a third-party defense at trial? If they are not allowed to do that, we're less than 6 weeks from trial. What are they going to do? What are they going to pull out of their hat in 6 weeks? So I don't know if we will go to trial. They could ask for a delay. They could
They better come up with
try to get a
temporary
plea.
insanity or
Right,
something.
Something else. So we'll have to see what happens. But that's a big thing we're watching in Delphi. But no, this Taken Together documentary, that will be our next documentary that I plan to cover on Caught in My Web.
Okay, good. Yes. Because when I watched it, I was like, oh God, I wonder what Jody thinks about these statistics of how rare it is and how of the 17, and I'm completely just coming off the top of my head, I don't know, of the 17, maybe 14 have all been in this Midwest area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, like a
Interesting.
state over, but it's not like California, Florida, New York. It's like all sort of in this Midwest area, which is pretty interesting.
That is. That is. I'm looking
Uh-huh.
for it. Well, I'll come back and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, let me know when after you watch it, like, just text me and tell me what you
I
think.
will. I will.
Um, and my last thing that I'm completely obsessed with, is the I always say it wrong, it's Gilo Beach.
Oh, Giglio.
That piece of
Yeah.
shit. Where is he? Where is he in jail? Let me know to stay away from wherever he is, because he's the scariest guy I've
He's
ever
in
seen in
Long
my life.
Island, Giglio
Okay,
Beach.
good. I don't go over
Um,
there.
so he erects humormen. And let me tell you what, over the summer, we got some new information from law enforcement that they found when last summer when he was arrested, he is accused of murdering at least 6 women. But they're investigating
There
him for
have to be
many
more.
more. There were a total of 11 bodies found on this stretch of beach, right off this beach in Long Island. Okay. And for years, it went unsolved. Well, he has been linked to several of them and charged with several of them. But when they executed this massive search at his house in Long Island back in 2023, they were there for almost 2 weeks, taking the house basically down to the studs. They took a lot of evidence, and amongst the evidence they took were a multitude of electronic devices that they had to break into. They had to, get around the passwords, and then they had to go through. Well, he had a deleted file. And in this one deleted file, it was basically like a manifesto, like his planning document, what he was going to do, how he would premeditate and case areas for his victims. Look for cameras, look for different
Mm.
victims. What qualities in a victim did he want? He wanted smaller victims. So in this
Because
document,
the victims were mostly sex workers, yes?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
And so they found this document, and it is chilling. All the details of how he planned to essentially murder these women and
Hide
what
them.
went in and hide them and torture them. And then,
And then he would, like, use their own phone to call the family I mean, this is a sick fuck,
yes,
and I think that when you see him and how, like, big and kinda gross he is, and that he did have kind of a high-powered job, and the people that worked for him, especially the women, were like, "Oh, no, he was that gross, nasty boss that you would try to avoid because he was like a"
he looks like an ogre. He does. He is
Yes. Looks like Shrek.
massive. Yes,
Yes.
he does look like Shrek. And speaking of necrophilia, there's that in that case
Oh
as well.
god.
So
Oh
trigger
god.
warning for that.
Oh
But
god.
yes, there's a lot. I mean, he is literally, he's innocent until proven guilty. But this document that was found, it's going to be really hard. I don't know. If I was a defense attorney, I don't know what I would. I mean, obviously, you try to get the search warrant tossed out to try to get that document tossed out. But this this is huge evidence that they found. And one of the things that comes out in this document is how he would prep his room, and it sounds like he would line it with plastic sheeting, a lot like Dexter. And
Yeah.
he would adhere the plastic with adhesive tape and push pins. So they went back this year after finding this document and used a special kind of light. And sure enough, they found adhesive residue and push pin holes in the ceiling, in the walls. So they think this
Just
is,
some room in his house?
he's had basically like, it was like a vault that he put a lot of guns and everything in, but it
Uh-huh.
was like closed off. It was basically like his kill room, his Dexter room. That's the way it came across in
Does he
the
have kids?
information. He's got, well, a daughter and a stepson that live in the
God.
house. Live in the
God.
house.
God. Oh my god. Okay. Whoo, I feel like I need to do, like, this is what we do sometimes. We do, Whitney Rose. We clear the air.
Yes.
Clear
Well,
the
and
air.
here's the thing about places, that, it is believed by law enforcement he took the victims back to his house, and that's where the killing took place, because a lot of times his family was out of the
Out
country
of the
or
town,
in
yeah.
another state. A lot of times with these notorious crime scene locations, like the homes, like we saw in Idaho, they tore down the home. Just yesterday, I covered a story on Chad Daybell, who
That
was
piece of
part of
shit.
that horrible murder case. Well, that home just sold. And the people who bought it have a nonprofit, and part of their motivation for buying that property was that there were rumors going around that it was going to be bought and turned into like a macabre Airbnb, where, hey,
No.
if you want to stay where the murder took place, you can rent the place.
Of 2 children?
2 children and his first wife, Tammy. Yes.
Jeez.
So these people were like, oh no. Oh, no, 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 no. So they had the money. They have allegedly come forward and bought the property, and they're going to raise the main structure and the outbuildings. And then they want insight as to, okay, well, what kind of memorial can we make? We want to basically make this like a non-looky-loo type place.
Yeah.
Because that's the problem. And I think there's going to be the same problem in this neighborhood in Long Island with the Gilgo Beach killer's place. Is that, look, this is a notorious site now, just like Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment building in Milwaukee. They tore that down too, because they do become looky-loo situations where the true crime fanatics and, you know, some of the people that are more macabre, there are people that go from different murder scene to murder scene, almost like it's a vacation. Like, let's go see this place.
Yeah, there's like bus tours and stuff. When you go to LA, you could do like bus tours and go and see
like the mansion,
the famous murders and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we
OJ.
we were in Paris last time. It was like, you know, a lot of people want to go to the tunnel where Princess Di was killed. I was like, I'd rather not. I don't need that juju coming on me.
Yeah.
You know, that's awful. Oh my God. Wow. What a journey this has been.
Yes.
Listen, everybody, Jodie I've already told you, she has a great Patreon. It's called Caught in My Web. You get it? Jodene Weber, get it? Caught in My Web. It's really, really good. It's every day. She talks about current cases, and then also you throw in these documentaries, like you said, you're going to do Taken Together. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And you can find me on patreon.com, and I'm always open if people have unsolved cases in their areas that they want me to look into and talk about and give you my insight as to what could maybe be done to help solve it. There's a lot of cold cases out there right now that are getting solved with investigative genetic genealogy and the new DNA technology available. So I think there's a lot of hope for us. And I think because of all the new technology, it makes cases like Gilgo Beach where we're finally catching these people because new technology is finally able to catch up with the crime.
Oh God, that guy can't even, I'm going to literally have nightmares about that guy tonight. Everybody, you can follow me at Pink Shade Pod over on Instagram. There'll probably be a reel up from this episode later. It'll be a lighthearted one. It won't be a murder one. And follow Jodie too. And that's Jodene Weber on Instagram.
Weber Jodene on Instagram, Jodene Weber everywhere else.
Okay. Just look it up. You'll find it. You'll find it. Thank you, Jodie.
Thank you so much. Great talking with you again.
Ads not read by me, Mary Payne, don't necessarily reflect the views of Pink Shade. If you'd like to listen to ad-free, you're going to go on over to Supercast or Patreon, and you can find the links to Pink Shade Prime at pinkshadepodcast.com.